Hi, Mike Kennedy. Look at this. Ain't I beautiful? Beofeng radios. This radio, in 30 days, will be illegal to sell. The FCC has decided, Federal Communications Commission, that these radios are not acceptable and will ban the sale of all of them in 30 days. Now, there might be a way that Beofeng can get out around that, and I'll kind of explain that. But first, and I've got to read the rules more carefully and see what's involved. The FCC has something called type accepted, which means generally you have to use a radio for the purpose that it was made for. And usually radios have to be made for a certain type. In other words, if I take this radio and program in marine frequencies, well, this isn't a marine band radio. And why should that be important? Well, there are a number of reasons why that's important. One of them is the signal purity, splatter, and just this idea of whether it's narrow or wide band. In other words, when you buy a radio for a particular band, it takes in all the consideration of that short range of frequencies. When you get a radio like this, which basically transmits from, let's see, let me get the introduction. It has a very wide transmit range. Instead of doing like 144 to 148 for the 2-meter handband, it does something like, I believe it's 130 something to 170 something. And then the 440 band is likewise like that. But here, side note.
The temperature was 72 and the wind was variable at 5 miles an hour.
You can transmit it, you can program in the NOAA weather bands to get weather emergency information or just regular weather reports. Well, they tend to be quite long. If you listen to that long enough, you realize that you have to, when you start listening, they're repeating this thing, and sometimes you have to wait quite a while till they catch back up. Because sometimes they'll be doing the temperature of the water on different buoys that are out in the water, which is very important for some people to know, not for me. But anyway, so the FCC doesn't like these. And why do they not like them? The FCC is the guardian of radio frequency, if you can think of it that way. Instead of guardians of the galaxy, they're guardians of the radio frequency. And they take their job extremely seriously. So, and again, like I said, radios that are usually built for one specific purpose usually have all those specifics programmed into it or just made into it. In other words, you can get if you get a CB radio, it does the citizen band. That's it. Well, it is possible to go in there and monkey with it if you have enough technical skill and the people have designed the CB radio poorly that you can go in there and modify it and make it do other things. But that's usually considered illegal because it's not type accepted. But so having this radio, it's just occurred to me, getting this, how much harm you could do with this. Because so many people are buying them that have no knowledge. In other words, a lot of people that are non-ham radio licensed people have bought these. You know, some of them are these prepper people that say, "Oh wow, I got to have these. When society falls apart, I'll still be able to talk to someone else with one of these." But in reality, some of these are fairly complicated to set up, and some of those people aren't even going to get the radio. They'll be able to charge the radio up, but they might not be able to even get it to work. But the idea is this can transmit on a lot of frequencies that create a lot of interference with very important things. There was this couple in Florida who gave their kids 2 of these to play with. Oh, here's walkie-talkies, go play with them. And actually, somehow, I don't know who dialed the numbers in, maybe the kids did or whatever, but they were actually on the radio frequency that an ambulance used to talk to the hospital, and they were disrupting an active call that the ambulance was trying to make. Now, they weren't doing it intentionally, but they were interfering with it. And, the FCC came and took those radios away. I don't know whether they find the adults. The FCC, from what I've looked at, likes the figure $7,000. if you do anything wrong, you're going to start at $7,000. Sometimes you can get out of it by forfeiting all your radio equipment. Sometimes, including your ham license radio. Sometimes they'll take everything and still fine you. So it's the FCC is very serious if they actually get around to catching someone and charging someone. It's not going to be pretty. But so with this type of radio, you could interfere with medical facilities. You could interfere with police and fire, other emergency type situations, and even to some degree, depending on the airport, you could monkey with airport communications as well. See, and normally, if I bought this radio and it was just for 2 meters or 440 or a couple ham bands, even 3 ham bands, they don't have that concern because I'm staying within those bands, and most people who buy those radios are going to buy them because they're an amateur radio person. But these have become so cheap. This is a $37 radio that outputs about 5 watts. It says it does 8, but what I've read, most people say it does closer to 5. But so tons of people buying these radios that can transmit on all kinds of frequencies that could interfere very important communications. So the FCC and their wisdom, and I have to agree with them, even though I bought one, they've just said no more. Now, they haven't said at this point it's illegal to own them or use them, but sometimes that will kind of be buried in the regulations of saying it's not type accepted. In other words, if the FCC considers this radio not to have been manufactured for ham radio, it could be very well that that's the legal grounds by which you basically have to get rid of it and not use it. So we shall see. I'm going to look at the rules, try to figure them out, sort out this thing of type acceptance. We're still going to go on with programming it and using it. I've decided to go, I looked at the instructions and they're like bizarre. So there's this program called Chirp, like a bird chirp, and with it, it kind of looks like a spreadsheet. You can put in all the informations. You get this cable that connects in to the port here, and you can download all those numbers, and then your radio's all programmed. It's a lot easier than going through, I don't know exactly how many, but I'll say 10 or 15 key press for every frequency you put in. So there we go. Just an interesting thing that, now, how could Beofeng get out around it? And would they? Well, number one, China doesn't kind of care, honestly. They don't care if what they're selling is illegal or not or whatever. And, they can just put it on the person buying it, saying, well, sometimes you'll see fine prints, these things from China that says, well, you're responsible for any duty or other issues with it coming into your country. So it's like people, they may still sell these, and then your order never gets to you because custom gets it and it just doesn't get to you. But one way they could get around it is to, they could take the same innards of this radio and they could change it in such a way, whether it's a hardware fix or a software thing that users can't change. That's the important thing. They got to manufacture a radio that is not easily changed to go outside of its intended purpose. Then all of a sudden they could sell this as a 2 meter or 440 ham radio, put a little different case on it, change the innards again just a little bit, make it a marine radio, change the innards a little more, and just turn off the transmit, just make it a scanner. So there are ways that Beofeng can get out around it, but I seriously don't think they'll bother because, I don't know, that just isn't the way the Chinese work. The Chinese make something cheap and sell it, and then you're going to have the consequences of whether it's right or not, or whether they can use it or not. So it'll be interesting to see, but like I say, I assume that in 30 days, the end of September, that the FCC will just be seizing these that come into the country. They won't allow them to be sold. I don't know how eBay or many of these places where these things are sold, how they'll how they'll deal with that, whether they'll just kind of close their eyes and keep doing it, or whether they'll be proactive and say, well, the FCC is requiring us not to allow these to be sold. It's kind of a tricky thing when you try to do something that there's a law against and then try to pass the responsibility off on someone else. That doesn't always work. So we'll have to see how it works out. And like I say, a lot of people in ham radio community and everything too, they hate these things. They don't like the way they sound. They don't like what they do. They think they're cheap, inferior radios that, that if push comes to shove and you have a real emergency, you're not going to be able to depend on it. So it'll be interesting to see how it all turns out. But just a warning that you might want to read up on the FCC's regulations before you order one of these, because, like I say, I'm pretty sure in 30 days it will be illegal to sell or to buy one, but not illegal to have one. Like I say, I don't know how that works. We will see. Bye.